All right, let's jump right in. We're going to try and build a mental map of one of the world's most complex and influential nations, for sure. We'll look at everything from its ancient roots to its crazy modern-day dynamism. The goal here is to break down the key things that really define China today. Everything about China is just huge. It operates on this massive scale. And it all starts with a number that's kind of hard to even wrap your head around. Over 1.4 billion people. Think about that. That makes it the second most populous country on the planet. It means that about 1 out of every 6 people on Earth is in China. Wow.
But here's the thing. This modern nation, it's built on this incredibly deep foundation. We are talking about a continuous civilization that goes back thousands of years. This is the civilization that gave the world things like gunpowder, paper, the compass, way before they showed up anywhere else.
So if you really want to get a handle on modern China, its economy, its politics, its role in the world, you've got to understand the epic journey that got it here. It's this incredible story of dynasties, revolutions, and just massive transformations.
Okay, so let's start with that deep history. Why? Because in China, the past isn't really just the past. It's a living, breathing part of its modern identity. It's something you can still feel echoing today.
What's so cool about looking at a timeline like this is you can see these huge cycles playing out over millennia. Cycles of unity and division, of incredible innovation and deep tradition. We see the very first dynasties popping up over 4,000 years ago. Then the unification of China into this super powerful empire. And of course, inventions that literally changed the world. And it all leads up to this dramatic moment in 1912, when 2,000 years of imperial rule just ends. But man, that transition was not smooth. It was incredibly turbulent. This period is known in China as the Century of Humiliation. You had the old empire getting weakened by things like the Opium Wars, being forced to sign these, unequal treaties that gave up territory and power. And this whole experience, it profoundly shaped China's modern national consciousness. That memory of foreign intervention is still a really powerful force today. It often fuels this intense national pride and this deep desire to restore China's central place on the world stage. So, out of all that turbulence, a completely new chapter begins. After the empire falls and you have decades of conflict, the year 1949 marks a transformation that would pretty much redefine the entire country. So on October 1st, 1949, Mao Zedong stands up and proclaims the founding of the People's Republic of China. This was a total, fundamental restructuring of the country's government, its society, everything. It placed all political power into the hands of one single entity, the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. But, after decades of this really rigid, centrally planned, state-controlled economy, the most dramatic shift of all came in 1978. China decided to try something completely new. It was this policy that blended its socialist system with market-based principles. And let me tell you, this change didn't just transform the nation, it transformed the entire world. This policy was called reform and opening up, and it wasn't a big bang. It was a really methodical, step-by-step process. It unleashed private enterprise, it welcomed foreign investment, and eventually it led to China joining the World Trade Organization in 2001. That's when it fully plugged itself into the global economy, and boom. It unleashed decades of growth that was just unprecedented. And the results of that transformation, they're just staggering. Absolutely staggering. So let's take a look at the economic powerhouse that China is today. Okay, first up, the sheer size of it. We're talking a $19.4 trillion economy. By that measure, nominal GDP, it's the world's second largest, right behind the United States. Its size alone makes it a central pillar of, everything. Global finance, global commerce, you name it. And then there's its industrial might, which is just hard to overstate. For decades now, China has been the undisputed #1 manufacturer. It earned that nickname, the world's factory, for a reason. It produces this huge share of all the stuff we use every day. Phones, clothes, electronics, everything. And this chart really shows you just how dominant that position is. Look at that. China accounts for nearly a third of all global manufacturing. That's almost as much as the next 3 countries, the US, Japan, and Germany, combined. That's incredible. But this economic miracle, it wasn't just about numbers and factories, right?
it had a profound human impact. Get this, between 1978 and 2018, that growth lifted an astonishing 800 million people out of extreme poverty. Now, of course, that kind of rapid industrialization came with its own immense challenges. We're talking about huge environmental problems and growing inequality between the booming cities and the countryside.
But let's remember, behind all these massive economic numbers are 1.4 billion individual people, and they make up this complex and incredibly diverse social fabric.
So, you might hear that China is mostly Han Chinese. And that's true, they make up over 91% of the population. But that simple fact, it kind of hides a much deeper complexity. See, the country officially recognizes 56 different ethnic groups. It's really more like a mosaic. And even though Standard Chinese, or Mandarin, is the national language, there are literally hundreds of distinct languages and dialects spoken all over the country. You've got Cantonese in the south, you've got Uyghur and Tibetan out in the west. It's incredibly diverse.
And maybe one of the biggest social changes of all has been this monumental migration. People moving from the countryside into these massive, sprawling cities. Think about this. In 1980, only 1 out of 5 people in China lived in a city. Today, it's more than 2 out of 3. That has completely reshaped the nation's landscape, its culture, its whole way of life.
So, when you have this kind of massive internal economic and social transformation, what happens? Well, naturally, it propels China into a new role on the world stage. It's now a major and, often very assertive player in global affairs.
And you can see its influence just by looking at where it sits. China holds a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. That's a huge deal. And it's a key player in pretty much every major international organization you can think of. The G20, the World Trade Organization, the BRICS group of emerging economies. It's at the table.
And it's not just showing up to meetings either. It's actively trying to shape the world. Through these massive global infrastructure projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, China is literally building new trade routes and diplomatic relationships. It's a way of extending its influence across continents.
So you put it all together, right? The ancient history, the massive population, the incredible economic power, and this growing global ambition, it all leaves us with a really critical question for the 21st century. As China writes its next chapter, how is that story going to shape the future for all of us? Because one thing's for sure, it absolutely will.